Hello everyone. I hope you're having a good Spooktober. And if you're not watching October, which is probably far more likely, hello. Anyway, I'm here to talk about something far more scarier than hell. No, this is development hell. Woo. A lot of things can go wrong during the development period of a game. I mean, just look at Silent Hills for example. Hideo Kojima told a really compelling story with eerie visuals that showed how far the horror video game genre could be taken in his PT demo. But then Konami was like, we don't need you. And then they did some totally logical things, like they crossed his name off of the box art on Metal Gear Solid 5 and canceled the Silent Hills game he was directing and fired him! Now that's true horror. And they didn't even let him claim his award in person.
He would not be allowed to travel to tonight's awards ceremony to accept any awards.
Nice job, Konami. Now, a company restructuring or a change in management aren't the only reasons a game could go unreleased. No, there are many, many reasons that a game could go unreleased or canceled.
These things, they take time.
And the Resident Evil series is definitely no stranger to having canceled games. I mean, just look at the Resident Evil wiki page. They have 2 list items for canceled games. Now that's a lot of unreleased games if you ask me. But I'm only here to talk about the 4 different versions of Resident Evil 4. To give you some background really quick, this development hell that the game went through happened after the release of Resident Evil 2. In 1998, after Resident Evil 2, a dev team started to work on Resident Evil 3. Now, this version of 3 was called the cruise ship version, and it was meant to take place on a cruise ship infested with human-plant hybrids. The main protagonist was meant to be Hunk, who was the leader of the Umbrella Corporation's Alpha Squad. Now, just as a side note, let me show you how good of a squad leader this guy Hunk is.
You, come with me.
I don't think you should go with him.
This way.
He's leading you to your death, don't go. Oh, what did I tell you, man? Come on.
I'm all that is left of Alpha Team.
Now, although this idea with Hunk got kind of scrapped, he did make it into the final version of Resident Evil 4 as a minigame character. Go Hunk, woo. The reason this cruise ship version of Resident Evil didn't last very long was because Sony actually tipped off Capcom that they were making the PlayStation 2. And then Capcom was like, well, we have to utilize their hardware more. This is a big release for Resident Evil. So they canceled it. But then they later reused the cruise ship idea in a game called Resident Evil Dead Aim, which is what you're watching right now. This is gameplay of that game. It was a little known game actually, and it came out before the release of Resident Evil 4. Why, you ask? Well, Resident Evil 4 had to be impressive. It had to be stylish. Stylish was the next version of Resident Evil 4 that went in development. The director who was going to be directing this more stylish version of Resident Evil was named Hideki Kamiya, and he really never enjoyed the horror video game genre. But because of his previous work on Resident Evil 2, they wanted him to direct this game. So with Hunk cut out of the picture, they wanted this new character Tony Redgrave, who had superhuman powers, to be the new protagonist. Now, since this game was being developed for the PlayStation 2, they were able to handle more impressive 3D backgrounds, and they really wanted to show that off. So what they did was change the game's visuals to be more stylish and cool. And since the director hated horror and like creepy and gory stuff, they changed the gameplay and visuals completely over to that kind of style. So it played differently than a Resident Evil game, and it looked different than a Resident Evil game. So why is it a Resident Evil game? Well, that's what the creators thought too, so they changed it into what you know now as Devil May Cry. So Devil May Cry actually began as a Resident Evil 4 game, interestingly, and the director actually never went on to direct another horror game in his life. He directed Okami after that, Beautiful Joe, and a lot of other good titles. Now, at this point, they're really scrambling to try and get a game out for this PlayStation 2. And right after they decided to rename the stylish version of Resident Evil to Devil May Cry, they began the castle version of Resident Evil 4. Now let's go over the protagonists really quick. So we had Hunk, he got cut out. Then we had Tony Redgrave, he got cut out. Now we have, finally, Leon, who is the protagonist of this version of Resident Evil 4, who we all know today is the protagonist of the released version of Resident Evil 4. In this version, Leon was meant to infiltrate the castle of the Umbrella Corporation's president, and he was also the only survivor and infected with a virus from a bioweapon called Black Fog. So here's where Capcom went wrong with Castle. they went over to Nintendo. They were like, hey, let's sign an agreement. So we're the only ones that are going to be on your system. It'll be exclusive to the GameCube. And then they went beyond the limits of the GameCube hardware wise. So they had to cancel it again. The main offender was the Black Fog, and obviously that's the main focus of the game, so they can't just remove it. So they just scrapped it and went on to the next one. However, not all was lost with this project, because interestingly, they gave the script over to a game called Haunting Ground. The next version of Resident Evil 4 was called Hallucination, and it was written by Yasuhisa Kawamura, and he was inspired by the horror film Jacob's Ladder. Since he was a fan of psychological horror, he really wanted to incorporate that in the Resident Evil universe somehow. So they decided to go with a game that showed you hallucinations of things that were all in Leon's head. The reason that this project failed was similar to the reason that the Castle project failed. The hallucinations required 2 versions of every room to be loaded in RAM, and the console they were working with at the time simply just did not have enough RAM to accommodate that, and the project eventually just got scrapped after a while because they couldn't find a way for it to work on the console. The final project this development team tried to implement was called Zombie. And with Zombie, not much is known about it. What is known about it is they wanted to kind of rework the zombie. They wanted to make it more scary and grotesque. But then Shinji Mikami finally had enough and took over the project and saw the old formula, revisited it, and made the game you all know today as Resident Evil 4. Hi everyone, I just wanted to say happy Halloween, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, please check out all of the people that made this video possible. I will leave all of the sources that I used in the description, especially this Forerunner who wrote the 5 times Resident Evil 4 face cancellation. Also check out the Resident Evil Wiki and the Resident Evil Wiki Discord. They really helped me out there and gave me all the information that I needed, and I thank them a lot. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for watching, and peace! Don't eat too much candy.